Welcome to the Quotive Corner. Today's quote is 10 words. And if you've ever sat in a meeting next to someone who talked the most and said the least, you're going to relate to this one immediately. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know. That's Lao Tzu from chapter 56 of the Tao Te Ching, one of the foundational texts of Taoism and one of the most translated books in the world, second only to the Bible. Lao Tzu himself is a somewhat mythical figure, a Chinese philosopher believed to have lived in the 6th century BC, though historians debate whether he was a single person, a composite, or largely legend. What isn't debated is the influence of what's attributed to him. The Tao Te Ching is 81 short chapters of compressed philosophical observation that has shaped Eastern thought for 2.5 millennia and quietly influenced Western thinkers from Thoreau to Carl Jung. This quote comes directly from chapter 56. Now, the quote. On the surface, it reads almost like a paradox. If the people who truly know something don't speak about it, then how does any knowledge get transmitted? And if Lao Tzu himself knew something, why was he writing it down? That tension is actually built into the text. There's a playful self-awareness in chapter 56 that a man writing a book about the limits of language is already in on the joke. One scholar noted that Lao Tzu essentially had to add a preface acknowledging that what he was about to say wasn't the real thing, that the eternal Tao is beyond words entirely. He wrote anyway, which tells you something about the nature of the observation. So this isn't a literal argument against speaking. It's a more precise claim about the relationship between genuine depth and the compulsion to perform it. Think about the people you've encountered who carry real expertise, the kind that's been earned through years of actual practice, failure, and refinement. There's a quality to how they hold that knowledge. They tend to be measured. They listen more than they talk. They ask questions that cut to the center of things. When they do speak, it tends to be specific, concrete, and useful. They're not performing knowledge. They're deploying it. And because they understand how much they don't know, they're not in a hurry to fill the silence with proof that they do. Now contrast that with the person who has just enough exposure to a topic to feel dangerous, the one who dominates every conversation about it, who has a take on everything, who treats every exchange as an opportunity to demonstrate what they know. That person exists in every office, every family, every social circle. And what Lao Tzu is pointing at is the dynamic beneath the behavior, that the compulsion to speak loudly about what you know is itself a symptom of not knowing it deeply enough. Real mastery tends to produce humility, not performance. Because the deeper you go into any subject, the more clearly you can see how much territory remains. There's a concept in psychology sometimes called the Dunning-Kruger effect, the observed tendency for people with limited knowledge in a domain to overestimate their competence, while genuine experts tend to underestimate theirs. Lao Tzu didn't have the terminology, but he had the observation. 2,500 years ago. William James gave us the art of knowing what to overlook. The idea that wisdom is partly about where you direct your attention. Lao Tzu is making a companion argument about where you direct your words. Not every thought deserves to be spoken. Not every silence needs to be filled. And the person who hasn't learned that yet tends to speak most in exactly the moments where quiet would serve them better. There's also something here about the limits of language itself that goes deeper than communication style. Lao Tzu's broader project in the Tao Te Ching was to point toward a way of being in the world, the Tao, that is fundamentally beyond what words can capture. The Tao that can be named, he writes in chapter 1, is not the eternal Tao. Language, by its nature, reduces. It takes something living and multidimensional and flattens it into a fixed form. So the deepest knowing, the kind that comes from genuine experience and integration rather than information alone, resists language not because it's secret, but because it's too alive to be adequately contained by it. We touched on this territory before when we sat with Robert Frost's observation that education is the ability to listen without losing your composure or your self-confidence. The educated mind, in that framing, is one that can hold complexity without needing to immediately resolve or verbalize it. Lao Tzu is pointing toward the same quality from a different angle. The person who has genuinely integrated something doesn't need the conversation to confirm it. They already know. The silence is not empty. It's full. Now, the honest pushback, because this show doesn't let ideas off easy. Taken too literally, this quote can become a convenient excuse for the kind of person who never contributes, never shares what they know, and justifies it as wisdom. Silence isn't automatically depth. Sometimes it's just withholding. Sometimes the most useful thing a person with genuine knowledge can do is share it clearly and generously. Teach, explain, articulate. Dick Winters didn't lead Easy Company through Europe by staying quiet. His leadership was expressed through action, yes, but also through clear communication of expectations, values, and intent. Knowing and speaking are not mutually exclusive. The quote is pointing at something more specific than a prescription for silence. It's pointing at the relationship between inner security and the need to perform. The person who truly knows something doesn't need your acknowledgement of it to feel real. They're not speaking to prove. They're speaking when it serves a purpose. And when it doesn't, they're comfortable letting the silence stand. That comfort with silence is rarer than it sounds. Most people find sustained quiet in a conversation slightly threatening, like something needs to be fixed. We rush to fill it, and in that rush, we often say things that are less considered, less true, and less useful than what we would have said if we'd waited a little longer. Lao Tzu isn't telling you to stop talking. He's asking you to notice what's driving the talking. Is it because you have something to offer, or because the silence was making you uncomfortable and you needed to do something about it? Those are different reasons, and the words that come from them tend to land very differently. Thanks for being here at the Quotive Corner. If this one makes you a little more deliberate about the next thing you say, or a little more comfortable with the pause before you say it, that's exactly the point. And as always, wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. I'll catch you in the next episode.